Hi, I'm Gabriel Ryder, and this is the project of Angelina, Mateo, and Gabriel on MDMA, also known as Molly, or 3,4-methylene methamphetamine. Molly was first synthesized in 1912 by German pharmaceutical company Merck. There are multiple different iterations of Molly. The main four is MDMA as a base compound. There's also different street names and variants as the second form, such as ecstasy and Molly, marketed as pure MDMA. There's closely related analogs, such as MDA or MDEA. Or there's also one, it's not very common, but it's called MBDB MEC, methylene buidolone. That can also be known as bath salts, which can sometimes be used quite a bit. Now, the fourth and final form is its pharmaceutical form in research-based or clinical trials. Now, there's different attitudes towards MDMA, such as there are towards ceremonial tobacco and recreational tobacco, such as for ceremonial tobacco, which is used in rituals, in recreational tobacco, which is used by everyday smokers, things like that. Now, for a social history of MDMA, we have the social history of MDMA is a fascinating journey that bridges science, underground culture, therapy, war on drugs, and now possibly medicine. Here's a chronological overview of Molly and its social history. 1912 to 1950s is its pharmaceutical origins. 1912, synthesized by Anton College at Merck as part of a pharmaceutical research. It was not intended for human use, but it was patented in 1914 but largely forgotten. There's no known recreational or therapeutic use during this period. It's seen as an obscure lab chemical with no social presence. 1960s to 1980s. Therapeutic rediscovery to criminalization. It was rediscovered by Alexander Shuklin, who explains its empathologic effects, and it gained popularity among psychotherapists as a tool for emotional healing, used legally but quietly. By the early 1980s, it entered club scenes from the name ecstasy. In 1985, MDMA was classified as a Schedule I drug by the DEA, ending legal therapeutic use. It was seen first as a healing aid, then as a recreational love drug, and then finally as a criminalized substance. 1980s to present. As rave culture, there's risk, and there's also medical rivalry. MDMA became central to rave and EDM culture in the 1990s to 2000s, often with impure or adulterated pills. Media fueled moral panic and health scares since the 2010s. Medical research, example by MAPS, has shown promise for PTSD treatment, leading to a shift in perception. Now on the verge of possible FDA approval as part of a psychedelic-assisted therapy, it was seen as both a risky party drug and now as an emerging medicine. Now for some more context, MAPS is a it can be put in multiple different ways, but it's an acronym used for describing drugs. Now, here's a global legal history of MDMA, showing how its status evolved across key regions and how its therapeutic and recreational users have influenced laws worldwide. 1910s to 1970s. Interest in the U.S. among psychotherapists, but no formal approval anywhere. MDMA was legal in most countries simply due to a lack of awareness or regulation. Global legal but obscure and unused outside experimental psychotherapy. 1980s, emergency in global scheduling. As MDMA spread recreationally, especially in the US and the UK and other parts of Europe and North America, governments reacted. In 1985, the USDA emergency scheduled MDMA as a Schedule I drug. 1986 to 1987, the United Nations, under the Convention of Psychotropic Substances, 1971, recommended MDMA be placed under the Schedule I, triggering global bans in many countries including Canada, UK, Germany, Australia, and a bunch of other countries around the world followed suit, classifying MDMA as a prohibited drug with no accepted medical use. Rapid international criminalization driven by moral panic, media attention, and fear of recreational use. 1990s to 2000s. Global enforcement in club culture. MDMA was widely illegal and demodernized globally. Still spread in underground rave EDM scenes in Europe, UK, Netherlands, Spain, North America, and Australia, but also a lot of parts of Asia. Law enforcement cracked down heavily in most countries, particularly in Asia and the Middle East, where drug laws are especially harsh. Pills were often adulterated due to illegality, increasing health risks, limited with or no formal medical research was allowed in most regions. It was seen worldwide as a dangerous party drug, prohibited dominated policy. 2010s to present. Medical reassessment in legal shifts. United Nations MAPS leads to breakthrough therapy designation from FDA 2017. Possible FDA approval in 2024 to 2025 for MDMA-assisted psychotherapy. Australia 2023 became the first country to legalize MDMA for clinical use, allowing psychiatrists to prescribe it for PTSD under strict regulation. Europe, United Kingdom, still illegal but increased research interest, trials underway. Netherlands, illegal but tolerated for personal use in some contexts, ongoing clinical trials. Switzerland and Germany, hosting illegal clinical trials with MDMA. Canada, it's legal but only for approved clinical trials. Its growing advocacy for reclassification. Rest of the world, such as Asia and other parts of Europe, North America, South America, and Africa included. MDMA remains prohibited in most Asian, African, and Middle Eastern countries. Use and possession often carry severe penalties, including prison or possible death. A global shift toward medical acceptance in some Western countries, but most of the world still enforces prohibition. MDMA, often grouped with entheogens or psychedelic-assisted therapy, substances has complex effects on the brain, body, and mental health. Some potential therapeutic, others risky, especially with misuse. Brain. Boost serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, infusing mood, empathy, and emotional openness. Therapeutic use. Reduces fear, enhances trauma, processing. It has risk of serotonin depletion, possible memory, cognitive issues with heavy use. The body. Short-term effects increase heart rate, body temperature, energy, jaw tension, risks. Dehydration, overheating, organ stress, especially in hot or unsafe settings. Mental health. Therapeutic shows to relieve PTSD and support emotional healing. Risks. Mood crashes, anxiety, potential worsening of pre-existing conditions, example bipolar or psychosis. While MDMA has traditionally been associated with white, middle-class young adults in club and festival cultures, the enforcement and health impacts of MDMA-related laws have disproportionately affected communities of color, especially in the US and Canada. Here's why. Enforcement. Black and Latino individuals face harsher policy and sentencing for MDMA-related offenses, despite similar or lower urges rates compared to white users. Access to therapy. Clinical trials in psychedelic-assisted therapy, example for PTSD, are predominantly white, with various access for communities of color due to systemic exclusion and medical mistrust. Cultural framing. MDMA use in white rave or wellness spaces is seen often as experimental or therapeutic, while similar use in communities of color is criminalized. Why this happens? Rooted in systemic racism, class disparities, and bias in healthcare and criminal justice systems. Those most harmed by trauma are often the least likely to access MDMA's healing potential, and most likely to face punishment for using it. How to avoid or delay MDMA use. Stay informed. Learn the real risks. Don't rely on myth or peer talk. Set boundaries. Practice ways to say no and avoid high-pressure situations. Protect your mental health. Seek support, not substances. To cope with stress or trauma, find healthy highs, engage in sports, art, music, or social scenes that don't resolve around drugs. Delay use. The later you start, if ever, the safe and less riskier it becomes. Smart choices now protect your brain, body, and future. In Canada, MDMA, commonly known as ecstasy or Molly, uses among teens remains relatively low. According to 2003 to 2024 Canadian Student Alcohol and Drug Survey, approximately 1% of students grades 7 to 12 reported using ecstasy. In the past year, usage rates tend to increase with age, with about 4% of students in grade 10 to 12 reporting past year use. Certain groups report higher usage rate. For instance, gender diverse students reported a 16% rate of past year illegal drug use compared to 8% among boys and 8% among girls. Additionally, students in rural areas reported higher usage, 9% compared to the urban counterparts, 6%. While MDMA use among Canadian teens is relatively low, it is important to continue monitoring these trends and provide education on the potential risks associated with use. In conclusion, there's treatment approaches such as behavioral therapy. There's also no known approved medications to help with addiction to MDMA. There's harm reduction. There's pill testing, hydration tips, and spacing out use reduce physical risk. Education and early warning signs can help prevent escalation and re-addiction. There's also alternatives and support. Mindfulness, art, music therapy, and exercises can replace emotional or social needs met by MDMA. Trauma-informed care and community programs build long resilience. Focus is on healing root causes, building healthy connections, and minimizing harm. Thank you for listening to our video and project on MDMA, also known as Molly or 3,4 methylene dioxide methamphetamine.